go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talking Female Health with Amy and Lisa, with my lovely co-host Amy Connor and me, myself, Lisa Yara, two female health coaches. And today the topic is something that is dear to my heart that I want to raise awareness about, which is the gender pain gap and why women are often not taken seriously when in pain. And you may have heard of the gender pay gap with this, which is the gap that a woman versus a man receives in salary for the same job with the same responsibilities, that there is a gap in salary just because of the difference in sex or gender. And similarly, there is something in the way we acknowledge pain in people. And this whole conversation came about recently when I talked with a friend who has suffered from pains and nausea and dizziness and a few other things since, like, for the last basically 6 months or so. And she has been to the doctors and blood tested and everything, and they couldn't find anything. Then at some point, like, she started having severe issues after meals and even needed to go to the hospital, but they did a complete scan and they didn't find anything. And then it went to the point where she was at the dentist, I believe, and took a painkiller, and that set her into a kind of psychosis and like fainting and everything. And they brought her back into the hospital and said, "What do you want here? We didn't find anything last time. Why should we find anything this time?" And that made me so furious just listening to that. And then at some point, there was one female doctor who looked at her blood and found that the inflammation values were very high and the liver values were higher than they should be. And that's how they detected that she had gallstones, and even her gallbladder was already inflamed, and she might need like an on-the-spot operation to get it removed. I think it didn't have to happen that way, but it was critical to the point of it could be fatal. And all of that, even though it had started half a year before, right? And I was just putting out this comment to her and saying, hey, I believe if you had been a man, they would have immediately found it. And to my surprise, or not surprise, to my shock, she replied, wait a second. A friend of ours recently had similar symptoms, went into the hospital, got checked. They found it immediately that he had gallstones. They got removed, and he could leave the hospital the same day. And I was like, yes, we definitely need to address this topic, because there is research that when a woman or someone presenting as a woman comes to the hospital and says, I'm in pain, that they get told, sit down, wait until you're next. And if a man comes in and is in pain, he immediately gets painkillers, he is cared for, and he can see the doctor earlier than a woman. And that is definitely something that is really wrong in our society. I wonder, Amy, have you ever heard or experienced of any of these cases yourself?
Yeah, like I feel that story that you've just shared is definitely not one on its own. And I know there'll be people listening to this that have experienced similar themselves or know someone who's experienced similar themselves. And to me, thinking about my own experiences of times where I have been in that much pain that I genuinely believed it was going to kill me. I just felt that my body couldn't cope with the level of pain that I was feeling. And a lot of the time I would deal with that on my own at home because I'd been into the hospital before, and it was almost like I was a big inconvenience for being there. And I think the narrative that we have in our society is that it's normal for women to be in pain.
Mm-hmm.
When we think about starting our menstruation, the fear that a lot of young women have around how painful and how inconvenient it's going to be. It's I'm going to say it's almost like it is like we are expected to experience pain and to have it as part of our life and it not be questioned.
And to bear it without complaining.
Yes, absolutely. And, I just know I speak to so many clients who have had a very similar situation to me where they believe it's all in their head. They get to the point where they're like, how can I be in this much pain? And the medical community is telling me that nothing is wrong. And I remember it really specifically. It's really traumatized me. I had a 5-day stay in hospital where I was in excruciating amounts of pain. And they just kept saying to me, we don't know what's wrong with you. We don't know what's wrong with you. We can keep giving you painkillers, but we just don't know what's wrong. This could just be that you're a woman and that you have periods. Like literally that was said to me, like some women just do have more painful periods than others. And it just angers
Which
me.
is true technically,
Yes.
but which doesn't mean it's okay.
Exactly. And it's just the normalization that menstruation is this really painful, unpleasant thing when actually it's a natural process that the body goes through. And it should never be getting you to the point where you can't function or think or walk properly because the pain is all consuming. And I see this a lot. And the example that you've just given of men going into hospital and being seen straight away. I had a similar situation when I had problems with my appendix, and I knew it was my appendix, and the doctors just wouldn't listen to me. And were looking at my medical history and saying, oh, but you've had all this stuff, you've had all these problems. So maybe it's something to do with these problems. And I was like, I can feel it. It's my appendix. And when I'd had that experience afterwards, I was conversing with different people, and all of the men that I spoken to were like, oh, I got the pain, I rang the ambulance, I was in the hospital, I had the surgery, and I was out and recovered. And every woman that I spoke to had a very similar experience. I was in hospital for hours, they were running all sorts of different tests, they were asking me all sorts of different questions. And to me, it's just really clear that the Western medical model system that we work to doesn't have a deep understanding of the female body. And it almost overcomplicates things for us. And like I said, gives it this label that, oh, this is a female body, so pain's okay. Like they're used to that. Everything's okay. We'll just leave her there and see if she calms down. Like it's almost when I don't know if anyone's experienced this when they're in hospital, like there's almost that institutional attitude of let's just see if she calms down, and then we might find out what the problem is, rather than really listening and valuing what that person is telling them.
And this is definitely not the medical system, and not the medical system alone. This is a societal problem, a deep societal problem anchored in our history of things like hysteria. And even nowadays, where I don't necessarily believe that, like, you can call a man hysteric. I do believe that, yet I have stopped using this word altogether because I'm acutely aware that this was something like a diagnosis for women who just were fed up with the societal standard of being suppressed.
Me and you.
Who dared speak out, and they were called hysteric. I mean, hysteria, the word coming from uterus, because it was believed that their uterus was somehow moving through the body, causing all these kinds of symptoms. And so many women are sent home, told, you've got stress, see that your stress level decreases while they're literally having a heart attack. I think that's a common example that is known by now pretty widely, that there are differences in symptoms for heart attacks in women compared to men, or female bodies compared to male bodies. And that what from the outside may look like a stress response and hyperventilation and such can be a heart attack for a woman. And that we don't often have this pain down the left arm that is described in men. It can be part of it, but it doesn't have to be there to be a heart attack. And also, I remember that in 2013, I almost died when I had a pulmonary embolism. So basically a big blood clot stuck in the middle of my lungs, preventing the blood flow to come in and out. I had an amazing male doctor at the time who put me on the machine that measures your heart rate and such. He looked at it. He sent me, wrote me that thing, said, you go straight to the hospital. It's either pulmonary embolism or an, I don't know the English terminology, but something with the heart. I went there at 8:30 in the morning. It lasted until 2 p.m. in the afternoon, until I was finally put into CT scan, because no one believed, no, she can't have, no, she's too young, no, she can't have a pulmonary embolism, she's just too young. And then I was in this, and I was still allowed to walk around and to sit upright. And the moment the CT scan was finished and I wanted to get up, they were like, no, stay down. Oh my God, we can't tell her. And I was like, what can you not tell me? That I have a pulmonary embolism, which my doctor diagnosed this morning. Thank you very much. And so the doctor afterwards looking at me and saying, I can't believe that you're still talking to us. I was like, yeah, thank you. I could have died literally there with all of you standing around because you just wouldn't believe what my doctor with his experience knew. And that is not directly the gender pain gap, but it definitely shows how much more information and research there needs to be done for certain conditions and how they show up in male versus female bodies. And also this belief, starting to believe the person again, validating their experience, even though you might not physically, scientifically be able to prove what they are experiencing. Absolutely. At least acknowledging.
It's just so huge. That's being listened to and heard when you are in that especially when you're in that state of, when you're in pain, you're in fear, and you just want to feel acknowledged and seen and heard. And when that isn't being offered, it adds to the whole experience of, they're just not listening to me. And you may be wrong, you may be saying it's this, but it's not, it's that. That's okay. But to me, just being listened to and having, to me, I've been talking a lot about this over the last few weeks, the trust, having trust in yourself and having that professional that you are trusting to support your health, trust what you are saying to be true to you. It might not be the exact thing that's happening to you, but just for them to know that this is what you're experiencing and this is very real to you and you need to be heard.
And it's interesting because you said earlier that it's almost like we put women to the side so that they can calm down and let's see if the symptoms are still there. While it's much more effective, I believe, to actually listen to the person, because feeling listened to calms down your nervous system faster than just being left to your own devices.
Completely. And to me, it just makes me, I just don't understand why this isn't common practice for And I know that people are overworked and all the other pieces that challenge the healthcare system, but just listening is so, I mean, we know, Lisa, in the work that we do, how important it is to listen and to really hear what the person has to say. And like you just said, it creates that sense of safety, it calms the body down. And to me, the big thing about the gender gap is that attitude of, oh, here she goes again. Like, that's exactly how I felt. I knew a lot of the doctors that when I took myself to hospital, a lot of the staff had seen me there before. And it was almost like an eye roll moment of, oh, she's back again. Like, and it wasn't a frustration of, oh, we really wish that we could find out what was wrong with you because you're clearly in pain and it's clearly really distressing for you. It was like, oh, she's taking up space. This is how I perceived it. She's taking up space, and there's nothing wrong with her because our tests, our equipment, our knowledge isn't finding anything wrong with her. And it's so damaging, and really scary when you're in that place of believing that something terrible is happening to you because you are in extreme amounts of pain and you don't know what's causing it.
The one thing that I want to mention, though, just to have this full picture, is that, of course, there are people who, I don't like to say overreact. I don't have a better word. If you find one, let me know. But who, because there is so much information available online, who get themselves in a state of frenzy, believing something is wrong when something isn't. So I just want to say that we need to question ourselves a little bit in the sense of like making sure that we apply common sense while still be like keeping this possibility open that it's true, because what you're experiencing is in the end what you're experiencing.
Yeah, and I think that what I would describe as a health anxiety of, again, that can be helped by being listened to. If you are and having someone communicate their beliefs back to you. So if you are panicking that you may have X, Y, or Z because you've got some symptoms, for that person to just spend some time with you and say, I really understand how you feel like this because X, Y, and Z could be symptoms of ABC, but this is what we're seeing, and this is why we don't think that is the case. To have it explained, this is where, to me, where the trust comes in. Just having it all falls back to connection and communication and talking to each other like we're equals. And it very much sounds like the healthcare system in Germany is quite similar to the UK, where it's almost this unspoken rule that the doctor's always right. We don't question what the doctor's saying.
Or if you're questioning, you are you are the annoying person.
Yeah. So to have this culture where you can communicate with each other and challenge each other's views and opinions a little bit in a really healthy and
from a friendly person, from a friendly attitude.
Positive and productive manner, then I believe that we can both parties can learn from that. So I think it's really important that if you are somebody who is listening to this and you don't feel that you're being listened to, if you do have something that you feel is genuinely wrong and you're not being heard, to ask whoever you're speaking to, your doctor, your consultant, if you can have an open and meaningful conversation to address all of your concerns. Because if you ask for what you want, and I'm saying this because I know that in the culture that I've seen in the hospitals and spaces I've been, this isn't common practice.
Mm.
You know, the doctor whizzes in with the clipboard on his rounds, like giving you as little time as possible and shoots on to the next person. To ask for that time and that space to go over exactly what your concerns are and ask them how they can help or what they can share with you to fill in some of your answers. Because again, if we're not asking for what we need, then we're never going to see that change.
Mm.
And yes, there is this huge gap between how men and women are treated in the health space, but we need to prompt that change by asking for what we need. And I think that if you start by having these really polite conversations of, you know, this is what I need explaining to me. Can you help? Can you answer this? Do you know somebody who can? Where do I need to go to get some of these things answered? Then I'd like to think that we're going to start making steps towards changing the culture and getting people to think and act differently within the space of women's health. Yeah, and it's really hard,
And
like I said. Yeah, go on.
and also, that's the point where Amy and I come in, because I believe, I know for myself, but I believe for you, Amy, it's similar, is that we don't see ourselves as like opposites to doctors. It's not like we want to
No.
disrupt the whole thing. We do value Western medicine fully, but we want to support also in these places where doctors and nurses and everyone, due to the makeup of the healthcare system, don't have the time, because
Yeah.
they need to, like, I understand that if you need to work like a company and make profit, that you don't have time to sit down with every patient and explain everything in full and attend to their needs. And that's where you, as the patient, can start looking, okay, if I don't get it from them, if I only get the like pure medical view there, where do I find someone who will listen to me and believe me? Because in the end, and I'm listening to this book called The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer, and she explains how especially artists, they think of their art as less valuable, of course, also because of societal issues, and also because they want to be believed that what they are doing is a valuable contribution to the whole, which I believe it is. Art is a contribution to the whole. It preserves our culture. It creates new things, new inspiration, and all of that. And likewise, I do believe every person wants to be believed. So believe the person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say that my biggest intention with my business is to help people to become more informed. And in order for us to become more informed, we need to be asking the questions. We need to get curious. And this is why I'm saying, if you've got questions, ask the person who is supporting you what answers they have. And if they don't provide answers to everything, that's when you can step outside of that medical community and come to someone like Lisa or myself and see what information you can get from us and look at things in a really holistic way, because we don't have all the answers. Like, I always hold my hands up and say, I do not have the answer to everything. And there's no one on this beautiful planet that does. But you have to get to the point where you are informing yourself and you are making decisions from a really informed place so that you begin to feel like you've got some agency over what's happening to you and that you are being listened to and supported whilst you address whatever it is that is challenging your health and your well-being.
Yeah, and it's even more than information. It's this self-trust and this understanding of yourself that definitely is a big part of my work, especially with the cycle awareness. It's like, how can I read my body's landscape so that I know how to support it best and support myself best? And that is the informed piece.
Yeah.
As like also sensing into, feeling into, getting in touch and into relationship with the body. More on this, it's not a purely informational level, it's a much deeper level on top of that. It's not coming from the mind, and I know you are fully in line with that as well.
Absolutely. But I think that there is this space where we can lose our awareness that we can get this knowledge from ourselves. And one of the things that I mean about becoming more informed is gaining that information that actually, hang on, I can actually listen to myself and I can start trusting myself, and I don't have to agree with what ABC is saying to me, because there's this little piece inside of me that I keep ignoring, or whatever it is, because that was definitely a big part of my journey, was having this realization that, hang on, if I listen to myself, if I start trusting my body and listening to what she's telling me rather than these people who are telling me that there's nothing wrong, because I know there's something wrong because all of these messages are coming through. So it's about really supporting yourself and knowing that if you are struggling, that is valid and it is real, and you deserve to be listened to and supported around that, and that you need to source someone somewhere who will do that for you, because it's so easy to get lost when you have so many more questions than you do answers. Yeah.
And I think the last thing I want to leave everyone with is, we are gaslighting ourselves when we get treated like that. We start gaslighting ourselves. Oh, it must really just be in my head. And it's not like everyone can fall under the trap of this gender pain gap. It's not that only, for example, male doctors believe that women's pain isn't. It can also be the opposite. And even just observing ourselves, because there was this interesting study that I saw where two different groups of people were shown the same picture of the same young child. And for one group, the name written as the child's name was a boy's name. And the other, with the same child, the same photograph, it was written a female, a girl's name. And guess what? The participants said, for the boy, they rated the pain that child was crying, and for the boy name, they rated the amount of pain that child was in much higher than they rated it for the same child when there was a female name attached to it. And so we all have this in us because it's culturally conditioned. And so it's also on us to, first of all, observe in ourselves, oh, when am I falling under the same trap? And do I therefore gaslight myself because I'm a woman and I should know how to bear pain? Whether that's menstruation or a childbirth or whatever other pain situation there is.
Yeah, that's a really interesting study, and it doesn't surprise me, sadly, that is the outcome that they got. And the last words that I want to share is to just please use your voice and make sure that you are being heard, and to keep challenging, if that's the right word, keep asking the questions, keep showing up for yourself, and please don't let the lack of answers mean that there is no solution for you, because this is so common, and I see this, hear this a lot from women, that you get to this space where you just feel so lonely and so desperate, and it's a really not nice place to be. And I just want to urge you to keep using your voice, keep speaking up for yourself, keep showing up for yourself. And Lisa and I are here to talk to anybody who is being challenged in any way by not getting answers to the questions, the queries that they have around their health and their well-being. We are here to listen to you and to give you the space that you deserve. Please don't suffer in silence and hide away because you've had too many negative experiences, because again, it is so common for women to feel like this and to feel like they're a nuisance and all of the other things. We are here to support you and open to have conversations with you, so please reach out to us. All of our contact details, email addresses will be in the description and the show notes, and we really look forward to connecting with you. And yes, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We would really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe so we can reach more people. And the last thing I will say is, if you've listened to this episode and you're thinking about somebody in particular that you think needs to hear it, please share it with them so they know that they're not alone and that there is people who will listen and, solutions available to them, because we know that it can be a really dark place if you're not being listened to. So please share it. And yeah, is there anything you'd like to say, Lisa?
Yeah, in case you have experienced something similar to what we've shared about with the gender pain gap or just not being listened to, if you feel comfortable with it, write it into the comments.
Yeah.
Just because it means raising awareness, stepping up, speaking up, showing yourself in this, because I know you're not doing it only for yourself, you're doing it for all of us, because your experience is unfortunately very common in our society. In case you do not feel safe to put it and publish it openly, that's of course completely fine. And as Amy has mentioned, our contact details are below. Then send us a mail, send us a message, and have you and your story be heard, at least by Amy and myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now I wish all of you a beautiful rest of your day and speak to you next time.
See you next time. Bye.